Now, I'm going to provide you with my perspective on the current situation with regards to the taxes levied by Swinomish and paid by the non-Indians living on federal trust land in Shelter Bay. Swinomish has every right to tax. And they can tax non-Indians living on trust land when those non-Indians agree to the tax. They have to agree. You cannot tax without representation. That's a right here in America. And Swinomish is held to the United States Constitution. And my interpretation of the Constitution would be that you can't have taxation without representation in America. It's a right. You have the right. But you can give up the right. You can agree to give up your rights. And my opinion is, right now, everyone in Shelter Bay who's a non-Indian living on trust land who pays the local jurisdiction of the Swinomish Indian Tribal Community is agreeing to the tax and not being represented. Interestingly to me, Swinomish exempts all of the tribal membership who own homes on trust land, like me, from the tax. The elected officials in Swinomish, who are elected by the tribal membership, when they levied the tax heroically to support schools, things like that, don't levy the tax on their constituents, the tribal members. So currently, I don't pay the tax because nobody asked me to. Now, if Swinomish had asked me to, I would have to say yes, because I'm a citizen of Swinomish, and I'm represented as Swinomish, and that government has every right to ask me to pay tax to support schools. In fact, I don't think it's fair. I don't. And I think that the jurisdiction of Swinomish, which has been expanding, Swinomish is taking more jurisdictional authority over and will continue to. However, at some point, the elected representative government, Swinomish, who they haven't evolved along with the jurisdictional evolution. The jurisdiction is growing, but the jurisdictional responsibility to consider who you're representing largely still, the elected officials, the senators, still are answering to their constituents and not considering or respecting the other people in their jurisdiction who they are enforcing their jurisdiction over. They're not, the people of Shelter Bay are not represented in the governmental process of Swinomish. And I think they could be. Not that the residents of Shelter Bay should have the right to vote for the Swinomish Indian Senate members, because they're not tribal members. But there are other things and other ways to be represented. and I'll give you, Swinomish has had meetings and listened to people in Shelter Bay, but what good does that do? Like, there's no representative authority. The meetings where they listen to people, there's no authority in that. Swinomish can listen, and they listen, and then they just say, "Well, we're going to do what we want to do." And people of Lacana know that. That there's nothing that the people of Lacana can do if Swinomish decides not to give money to the school. People of Lacana will just have to pay more. Even though the tribal members vote on the levy, they're voting for Lacana to pay more. That's not the best situation. And yeah, Lacana could be represented as Swinomish, and I'll tell you how. Senate subcommittees. There's a tax committee that makes all the rules. I mean, the Senate has to approve resolutions. However, the body of the work of the taxing occurs in the tax committee. And the Swinomish Indian Senate determines who's on the tax committee without having to take input from anybody else. They have the authority. They have all the authority. However, if you who are agreeing to the tax and agreeing to be taxed without being represented, you can go to Swinomish and say, you know what, we want real representation. We want real representation, and we have advised this could be part of the master lease negotiation. No, not just money, but hey, how about we talk about representation? And Shelter Bay, for example, this is just my opinion, Shelter Bay could identify people who they can recommend to Swinomish to be specifically placed on certain committees, the tax committee, the planning commission, in all those areas where the jurisdiction of Swinomish and the decisions affect the people of Shelter Bay. So that the people of Shelter Bay can be represented in the formation and execution of the laws pertaining to the taxes they are paid. So if you represent, you can tax. I have to pay federal income tax. I'm represented. Why? And everybody knows it. I mean, the people of Shelter Bay understand there is taxation without representation. I mean, this is one of the reasons we have the United States of America, because people believe that's a right. And it's a right. It's your right to be represented if you're being taxed in America, where we are. Now, you can give that right away, because rights are only rights if they are maintained as rights. They say freedom isn't free. It requires maintenance. It requires people to understand and speak out. And it reminds me of a saying I learned at General Council. My ancestor, the late Gus Stone Jr., who served his country as a Marine in Korea. And I believe he was on Pork Chop Hill, which to me, I can't even imagine that. To be a Marine, for one, and to go to war. and to fight for your rights. Anyway, what Gus said was, you could take a stick, you can break it, but if you take all the sticks, you put them together, you can't break it. And I heard him say that more than once on the General Council floor in our governmental process, where we have a voice, where we represent ourselves. And I didn't really understand it the first time I heard it because I was just young. And I'm just one person with my opinion of my integrity. But I'm just one stick. If we all agree, and who doesn't agree that we have the right to representation if we're being taxed in America? Who doesn't agree with that? Well, what are you going to do about it? You're going to just keep giving it away, your rights? Or are you going to come together, voice an opinion, and if enough people voice that opinion, I believe it will happen. And that's the power people have. The question is, does it even matter to you? You know, all the sacrifices that were made for us. What is our responsibility? To maintain the rights that we fought so hard to obtain. Does it even matter? Thank you.